And pass it over to you, Premdas. Thank you.
Well, thank you first for having me today, Naran and Kalamali, and my dear friends in Australia and possibly other places. We'll see. Um, you all have a dear place in my heart. I visited your wonderful country many decades ago, but it had a major impression on me, and I've had many Aussie friends over the many years as well. So it's wonderful to see this work blooming in Australia, and it really is. We feel that. I see it in some of the correspondences and a lot of our new students who are from your country. So um, anything I or others here can do to support you, you know you have it, but just to reassure you that that's there. I want to read a quote that I use almost all the time in my correspondences. It's usually a tagline for me. I'm going to read it just so I get it right. Swami said, and this is based on, of course, everything that he did in his life was based on his relationship as a disciple. And so we're very fortunate to have Ananda, because Ananda is founded not only on the guru, but on how to be a disciple. It's one thing to have a guru. It's another thing to have also the inspiration and the education as to how to get the most out of that relationship. And that's what Swami gave us. Swami Kriyananda gave us. And this is what he said. We are part of a great tide of loving, joyful energy that wants to give and give as long as people are happy to receive it. Now, I love that quote. And something that Master said that inspired Swami, outside of just the words, was the way he lived and the way he approached everybody who came into his life, disciples or not disciples. He was love. You know, there's a thing in the Vedas that said, God does not love, God is love. Now, you could stretch that a little bit. God does love, but ultimately, God is love. And my presentation to you today is really to have you feel that love that Yogananda not only gave the world, but is giving the world, because we're not dealing with just the human being that was the form that existed on this planet that Swami got to meet, Swami Kriyananda got to meet, and other people who've been on this planet have had the joy and the honor of being with. But he put into the ethers, not just hello, but he put into the ethers on so many levels. Now, those of you who are students already will understand this. The 8 principles that Yogananda said were aspects of God. And love is one of those. So Yogananda said at one point, I will radiate love and goodwill to others that I may open the channel for God's love to come to all. So this is both, in one sense, a selfish path, selfish in that this is about you, not about us. It's about you, each one of you. But it's also about your willingness, and you're empowered by your willingness, by the way, to share it with others. So both Swami and Master didn't say, do these techniques, believe these things, love. He said, take this and share it with all, because that's really our guru was not proselytizing. He didn't come here to convert. He came here to give us a reminder and the ability to become, we know who we already are. In other words, you are that. The Vedas say tattvamasi. That has become this. In the Christian and Judaic tradition, the statement, I am that. You know, if you take it a certain way, it sounds very egoic. Well, I am God. And Yogananda said, be very careful to say that you are God, because the ego is going to attach to it. But in essence, when the ego is demolished, you know that you are that. And I can't claim, to be 100% perfect at all. But the awareness that we can start getting and growing in is an indication that that's true. Because those 8 aspects of God, and I want to show you something that a recent Kriya disciple that we've been working with for a long time, she lives in Florida and she likes arts and crafts. So she sent me this bag, and this bag is kind of a one in all. It's or all in one, right? Okay, so it's a nice blue bag she gave me because I'm a Nayaswami, and she thought the intricate lining was kind of I had to use a lot of logic with her. She thought this was kind of a logical looking interior. So whatever she thought I could do to help her, she gave a lot of appreciation to me by sending me. And she gave some of these to Jyotish and Devi too. Logs, little slices of a branch or a stem or whatever you want to call it. But it's wood. They're wood slats. It's all in one. It's all one, but they've been sliced. And guess what they are? Of course, I've kind of previewed that for you. There are 8 aspects of God. Aren't they cute? I mean, they're nice. She polished these and painted them. And she's not selling these at all, but just to give you ideas. And I recommend doing something like this with those 8 aspects. So light, calmness, and there's a reason why I'm showing you all these. Wisdom, right? Start thinking about some of the other ones, but joy, right? Ananda, joy or bliss, sound or vibration, peace, power, and of course, love. And Yogananda was the avatar of divine love. And I've come to the conclusion that these 8 aspects often are bandied about, but we don't really necessarily delve into them. And that's because they look like they're philosophical ideas, even though we know love is much more than that. But these are feeling natures. And Yogananda has stressed these, and so did Swami. If you studied your art and science of Raja Yoga, or now it's under another name in our online courses, but if you studied the kind of essentials of Yogananda's teachings, these 8 aspects are basically what defines Satchidananda, right? So here's a hoary Vedic term that, Satchidananda, it's a nice sound, everything. And, it was translated in a very good way as existence, consciousness, and bliss. But even that, our guru, Yogananda, to push through the Western mind, made it even more acceptable by calling it ever new joy. He took this, what is God, to Satchidananda, to existence, consciousness, and bliss, and he, in a way, reduced it, but kept the power of ever new joy so that we could understand it. And we could know that it would enliven us. It wasn't going to be a burden. It wasn't going to be a philosophical challenge. It wasn't going to be something that you would, in conclusion, have to doubt, because we all know what joy is. We know parts of joy. And even if you know a little bit, Yogananda said it's ever new, ever expanding joy. Well, that transcends his physical being. That, he said, he put into the ether, these teachings, and much more, of course. Everything he did, and Swami followed him in that manner, luckily for us, because it kept the tradition alive and gave us a living example. And Swami empowered those of us who got to know him, but also those of you who have only heard of him or seen him. That consciousness, that existence, consciousness, and bliss as joy and power and peace and calmness and sound through chanting or chanting Om or feeling nature. All of these aspects of great wisdom have been given to us so that we can identify them in us. And if you say, well, I don't really know what peace is. Well, yes, you do. You do know what peace is, because you know the word and you know what peace could feel like. So by practicing feeling that little bit and appreciating by giving gratitude and acknowledging that it comes from that existence, consciousness, and bliss, or that it's really part of ever new joy, that then can expand in you. Plus, Yogananda gave us techniques. So let's just talk about joy for a minute. He gave us techniques to feel that in our spine, in our nervous system. And he said that the human body itself is the best conduit for an expression of God, of the known conscious beings on this planet. So we have a nervous system, kind of like
Okay, I found this on the web.
Okay, thank you. Siri likes to join me every once in a while. I don't know if you could hear that, but I'm going to turn it off. The human body in its shape, with the extensions of the legs and the arms and the head, is like a 5-pointed star. And he showed us that the symbol of the path to go inward is going through certain levels, but the inner part, the essence of spirit in its more original form, is a pattern that's inspired the human body, the nervous system. And if we can use that nervous system, we can increase our knowing. And not just here, it's the feeling nature. What I practice when I'm in the right space for meditation, when I know I'm doing it better than worse, I feel what I call the warm fuzzies. That's how I describe it. And it's almost an electrical feeling. And if you've ever been in bliss, let's say from music, you've heard a good piece of music, or you've been in nature, but something more on the physical side, but you've been surrounded by something and your system just acknowledges it, and you feel a rush up the head, up this back, and it kind of tingles, and you can feel like an essence around you. You can almost tangibly push on it. I believe that's what we're supposed to at least be aware of more than not. And that's an activation of that, in my opinion, of the Kundalini that's awakened. And that's a wonderful feeling. Now, we don't have to walk around with a buzz all the time, but that's an acknowledgement that the system is working and that it's leaving behind. What does yoga do? Yoga's chitta's vritti nirod. Yoga is the dissolution of those discordant waves of energy, the things that are interfering with us remembering who we really are. Because we are, and we forget. So that's why I like to, when I pray, I try to affirm who we are, and I thank Spirit, God, Master, Guru, Swamiji, whoever's inspired me, for reminding me that I already have God. I don't have to get God. I don't have to be better. I don't have to get anybody's approval, not even God. I am loved. God is love. And if I know that God is around me and in me, through me, then when I affirm that and I'm practicing the techniques, I'm more able to realize who I am, and then I can actually live in it without any doubts. And that's where the power comes. I like to say in a lot of our classes, something easy for new people to remember, but I'd like to share with you too. There's not a spot where God is not. And so whenever you have doubts, say that. There's not a spot where God is not. And that's just a kind of a negative approach, but it's a way of like shutting down the ego, because the ego is basically there not to tell us how great we are, but it's there just in the way we've been made in this program to keep us apart from God. It wants to admit that we're separated. It needs to know that it's separated, that it doesn't have to get busy with God now. But yet, God loves us whether we get on board or not. We just have the pain and suffering when we forget or when we don't live it. And that's also a way to get us back in. So, I mean, just this week in a class I'm doing, it's why is there pain and suffering in the world? Well, that's So we don't stay there. It's like the guru has got us at the train station and the train is going to leave. And he says, come on in. You have no idea where we're going, but I'm telling you, it's great. You're going to love it when we get there. Get on board. So once you're on board, and frankly, all of you are on board, the guru's got you already. I like to say the guru's got your back. The guru's got you on the train, whether you go forward on the train or backward, whether you sit on the left or the right side. Just don't get off the train. Frankly, he's got the doors closed at this point. That's so you're on your way to wherever he's taking you. And he's promised us the keys to the kingdom of God. And that's really what this path offers. It's the path of Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga, of course, is that technique that many of you know and many of you are working towards. And that is what is the strongest technique that Yogananda believed in, that came from Babaji through the generations of gurus to you now. And each of those gurus, that consciousness, just like Yogananda, is alive. That's alive because its existence, consciousness, and bliss, it's beyond the human form, but it took a human form so that it could get the message to Tatiana, to Bhakti, to Ashwin, to Anne, to Anju, John, you too. Yeah, and Anne, and please. That's the idea. You need to claim your heritage. And Yogananda really came to remind us who we are with no holds barred. I do a little consulting on the side, and I name that little business Unlimited Possibilities, which is actually a term Yogananda used at one point as kind of a catch-all for where this path would take you. And it's because we're told, and it's hard to believe at times, that we're unlimited, that we're ever new joy, that we're existence, consciousness, and bliss. We're part of that being that has taken the form of each one of us, that's taken the grass, that's taken the trees. But in our current form, we have the ability to not only touch the hem of God, but to know God. That's what Yogananda promised. Now, we may not know it right now, but you're on your way. And that should be felt as grace. You should feel that. And if you practice your techniques, Hong Sa, energization, you are unbinding the locks that keep us feeling separate. And you're encouraging the flow of energy in the spine. And without getting into the techniques completely, what we're talking about is loosening up the ability for Kundalini to move through the body as it needs to. That's why many of us at Ananda and devotees of Yogananda around the world often look 10 to 20 years younger than their chronological age. I mean, if you want proof, ask people how old they are. I mean, and on this path, and though it's really not consequential, what you'll find is what he promised in the energization exercises, the prayer. I mean, he designed the energization exercises. I know the history of it pretty well, but he designed that so that we could be able to find God in the 60 to 100 years that we have as human beings. Maybe longer if we keep our health up. And not that we want to be around just to be around, but we want to be around because many traditions say that in this lifetime, human beings have the greatest opportunity to find God. It's a blessing to be a human being because you have a nervous system that will allow you to transcend the mundane. And that it maybe took many, many, many reincarnations just to get to this level. So appreciate it, take advantage, squeeze it. Okay, so that's what he offered, but only a divine friend, a real, if you want to know who a friend is, a friend, yeah, my wife is my friend. She's also my wife. You know, there's many levels of relationship. There's, I've got many friends at Ananda, many friends around the world, but I'm really blessed like you are because if those friends are in tune with Yogananda, they too are channels. And a lot of the world just isn't either ready for or is coping with or in some disillusion, and they can't kind of come on the train. They just don't know how to even get to the train station, right? To get on board with these teachings. But for some reason, you have been chosen or attracted to this guru and this path that says you can and are that aspect of God in body. And that's not sacrilegious. You just have to be careful the ego doesn't grab onto that and then use it for the wrong purposes. But also to make sure that the ego doesn't say, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. A friend of mine taught me a mantra this week, and it's called "So What?" And it's whenever the ego acts up, and I've named my ego Ralph, whether it gets out of control to demand its way, or whether it likes to separate me from spirit and my guru, or more importantly, to criticize others because they don't know what they're talking about, or to criticize me because I've fallen into a tamasic, a downward pull of energy, or I'm too outward, and I'm not, for me, for my path, inward and upward. And so I call on Ralph and I say, Ralph, so what? So what if you think I'm going to fail on that? And so what if I fail? I have tried. I took my power. I took my energy, one of those 8 aspects of God, and I willingly gave it. I like the balloon, by the way, Ashwin. That's great. I like it. The energy of power, the energy of love, the energy of joy. See, all these qualities of spirit are interactive and they're equal to each other. They all fit together, just like, for those of you who came in late, just like the multi slices of this one tree that's been sliced and diced, and they're all essential to the tree. They're all essential to the unity of spirit. So when you find one, you can say, okay, if I feel I don't have enough peace, well, maybe I can increase my love. Maybe I can increase my wisdom. I'm good with that. I think I'm good with that. I may not be perfect, but I will love others more, and you will find yourself with more peace if it's a real love, and vice versa. If you have some peace, but you need power, actually, like a Gandhi, practice peace, and you will get the energy you need. So you're kind of feeding the soul by acknowledging, feeding the body, mind, and soul by acknowledging these aspects of spirit. And that, to me, is really true friendship, right? Because there is an essence, an entity that was formed from spirit. We're all from spirit, but this one entity as a personality crisscrossed the planet and found receptive souls, specifically in the Western cultures, at that period of time in the 1920s. This was a major critical time on the planet where consciousness was changing. We had just come from one world war that was thought to be the worst thing that ever took place on the planet. And we had another 15 years before another war that was even greater catastrophe took place. And Yogananda came to the West when the economic systems were breaking apart as well. And he came during a time when people were experimenting and creating new personalities because the old systems weren't working. That's one of the reasons why you saw a lot of extreme actions and socialization in the West, especially when things were breaking down. People got very hedonistic because they were looking for different ways to get rid of the old, and they were trying to find the new. And in the middle of all that, basically a Black man from India with long hair and strange clothing and a strange name with a foreign religion came to the heart at that time, and with all respect to Australia, but the heart where things were happening in the 1920s to the 30s and 40s, where he could establish a work. And he said that he would have that energy and teachings put into the ether for all times. And that's really the deep friendship, because that friendship says we are one, and just like a Jesus, just like a Christ energy, Christ consciousness, it says that I and my Father are one, and turns around and says, but I'm no different than you. You're no different than me. I just might know a little bit more, but hey, kids, hey, buddies, hey, friends, let's go play. Really, this should be a fun path. Make it a path of joy. And when I say fun, I really mean joy, but also cater to that little bits of ego that are still carrying you forward, and make it fun. Express yourself, be artistic, be vibrant, play at the ocean, play in the mountains, get out in nature, have satsang with people, find similar people to yourself, obviously different too, but do things so you increase the energy, especially if you have the malady of what a lot of the world has. The civilized world kind of has, and I'm exaggerating now, but kind of has PTSD from those bad periods I was talking about, and the irresolution, if you would, and the cacophony that came from not resolving those issues. We're still carrying generations of angst. And yoga offers a solution. And Yogananda himself said that there was huge amounts of karma to be paid on this planet. And he was going to give us the techniques and the ability. Just as a teacher, he was going to do this, but he also said he knew who he was and reminded us that what he was is in us too. So we can call on that essence of who he was. He reminded people time and time again as that divine friend to especially disciples and followers that you could have all the pictures of him that you wanted, and I have them in my office and on my computers and everything. And that's okay, but that's not who he was. You have to see beyond, you have to see in it and through it. There's another expression I love that I got from my religious science training, and that was from Ernest Holmes. And he said, God in me, as me, is me. And I'd like you to just repeat that with me. God in me, as me, is me. And that's not sacrilegious, that's true. But God also doesn't need to promote himself, herself, itself. It just expresses, it is love, it is joy, it is calmness, it is peace. You know, the reason we can talk about these things is because, that's great. That's because Yogananda lived this essence. He lived each one of those 8 aspects and was a true friend to the merchant down the street, to the baker, to a new disciple like Swami Kriyananda, to devotees who are rising or falling or sinned greatly. By the way, you all know the admonition, the greatest sin is to call yourself a sinner. He said, you know, the time for sinning is over. There's no such thing. Don't let yourself ever feel that you've been cast into any hell. It may feel hellish, but God is always there. You have God now. Someone said, when will I have God? In fact, here, Yogananda said that himself. I'm going to read from a quote from the Autobiography. Sri Yukteswar taught me, Yogananda, how to summon the blessed experience at will, and also how to transmit it to others if their intuitive channels were developed. That's what he's given us. For months, I entered the ecstatic union, comprehending why the Upanishads say God is rasa, the most relishable. One day, however, I took a problem to my master. So Yogananda says to Yukteswar, I want to know, sir, when shall I find God? And Yogananda says that Yukteswar curtly said, you have found him. Oh, no, sir, I don't think so. My guru was smiling. I'm sure you aren't expecting a venerable personage adorning a throne in some antiseptic corner of the cosmos. I see, however, that you are imagining that the possession of miraculous powers is knowledge of God. One might have the whole universe and find the Lord elusive still. Spiritual advancement is not measured by one's outward powers, but only by the depth of his bliss in meditation. Ever new joy is God. So this tradition of divine friendship, of really reminding us and telling us when we're at our lowest or our highest, that it's with us. That transcends not just a Yogananda physically, or a Yukteswar, or a Lahiri, or Babaji. They knew who they were, not those personalities. They knew that Satchidananda was them, and they could then empower others by being around them and offering their energy. Many great true gurus don't have to have a lot of disciples. They just hold that energy and become a channel for it. God in them, as them, is them. And then when you brush up against a saint, you get blessed by it. I was fortunate to live in Italy for a year, and I got to be not only a chef there, which was my professional training, but also I got asked to be a tour guide for St. Francis, to take people to the holy sites of Francesco. And there's a tangible evidence of power and joy and all of those aspects of God in those places where he was. But it's also kept alive by the disciples, or those people who were attuned, as Yogananda called attunement. When they had that attunement to Francis and devotion, attunement and devotion with all your techniques, which you have already, that also gets put into the mix. It goes into the walls, it goes into the rocks. And one of the most powerful places I've ever been, two of them, was in the Portsuncula in Assisi, where that's the little chapel that St. Francis built by hand. And you can go and meditate there, and it's phenomenal. And also in Laverna, where he got the stigmata, I actually sat with my back up against that rock. And I was guiding at that time about 15 people in a small minibus, illegally in Italy, but God was with me. I can't explain it. It just happened, you know? And I'm sitting there, and I'm trying to tune into Francis and Master, because Yogananda said St. Francis was his patron saint, and he communed with him. He saw him, he came to him. So, and Yogananda had been there too. Anyway, I'm sitting there going, okay, God, whatever you want, whatever you want. Then I went, okay, but wait, not now, not now. I've got to drive back. And if you give me the stigmata now, I'm in a lot of trouble. Not that I really believed that could happen to me, but I realized that I wasn't quite ready to accept who I really was, because I had to be involved in the day-to-day. But I also said, you'll take me as far as I need to be. I trust the process. My point being mostly, though, that energy is real. And once you get sensitized to these experiences, you start feeling it more. And other people feel it too. Just today, a gentleman was here for the first time. He's here for Spiritual Renewal Week, which starts tomorrow officially. We had our Sevaka order meetings today. And he was from Michigan, middle of the United States. And he's been a member of Ananda for some time and a devotee, but he's never been here. And he started crying. He was talking to me. I didn't know him. I introduced myself and realized he was from Ananda, but he'd never been here. And he said, I just feel the energy here. It's phenomenal. It's just, I can't explain it, but it's everything I thought and more. I can feel it. And that's exactly right. Those are places of pilgrimage where God is evident, because the land, the people, the environment is charged. What did Yogananda say? The greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. So these are practices. The greater the flow of energy, the greater the magnetism. But sometimes he said environment is stronger than magnetism. Environment is stronger than will. But when you start becoming and you start tuning into the masters, what happens? You then become a source for energy that permeates everything. And Ananda Village, for instance, has been here for 60 years and produced, in my opinion, by a saint who based his life on a saint, who based his life on an avatar. And that's our heritage. And that's a heritage. Ultimately, I was asked this year about if I had to sum up Ananda and what I believe Yogananda's real mission is. I said, I need two words, and that's divine friendship. Because he found me, he found you. When I say he, that existence, consciousness, and bliss, which sounds like a great idea, something huge and beyond us, that has morphed into circumstances, into coding, if you would, that reaches you, whether it's visual, online, in person, but there's a tangible energy of love, of light, of sound, of calmness, of peace, light, that is talking to you constantly. And it says, wake up, little girl, wake up, little boy. You know, it's like Yogananda would talk like that. You know, he'd, come on, wake up. Let's go. You know, let's not miss this train. It's too fantastic. But you don't really have to worry about missing the train at this point. I love this image from the Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata. And this is when Krishna says, Arjuna says to Krishna, who Krishna is Arjuna's guru. Arjuna is the great warrior from the Pandavas, just about to go to battle. And he wants to be sure. So he circles, he has Krishna drive his chariot around to check all the opposing forces, just to see if everything's in order. And in the middle of all that, the way the story's told, they pause for, if you listen to the story of the Bhagavad Gita, it's about 3 hours. So they pause for about 3 hours while this dialogue goes on, right before the battle. And Krishna is asking, or is telling Arjuna about why he has to fight the battle. And at one point, this is Krishna here, and that's Arjuna here. At one point, Arjuna says, you know, I need to know who you are. I need to know what's going on. And Krishna says, are you sure? Okay, here I am. This is me. I'm really Vishnu. And I am all of the universe. I am the universe. And these are all of my forms. And this is supposed to show and imply that it goes on to infinity, right? And for about 2.5 chapters, they have this discussion, you know, and it's really good. And at the very end of that discussion, Arjuna says to Krishna, it says to Vishnu, please, can you just be my counselor? Can you be my guide? That's more than I can handle. And his hair is supposedly, you know, like an afro. It's really big and he's kind of on fire. He's electrified. And Vishnu, Krishna says yes, and he becomes Krishna again. So, you know, Yogananda brings us to that level, but he makes it personal. So I have that same image I have here, I use in our classes. I turn it over and remind people, Yogananda took that complex concept of the whole universe and he brought it down to this. He brought it down to holding your hand. He brought it down to being the guru. Here he's got a cane in his hand. The cane represents a danda. It's a spine. The gurus like to carry that. It represents the flow of energy. And Yogananda is here in India, 1935-36, with a little devotee who just, by the way, passed away a couple of years ago, I heard. But interesting that this is really what Yogananda is mostly known for. Known to be the friend, the divine friend. And again, we're so fortunate to have each other and to have this tradition, because other great devotees of Yogananda, you know, took strict monastic vows and they practiced that, and that's wonderful. They're carrying their energy. But for us, Swami took on the role of a householder so that we could have the spread of this. And the universe acts in strange and mysterious ways. When you think there are things where spirit is denying itself from you, well, maybe it's just preparing you for a different form that it wants you to take. That happened to Swami. He was going to be the vice president of SRF. He was for a while. And then he was fired and let go. And he himself was very discouraged, but many people around him who were of a spiritual nature said, your dharma is to share your master's teachings. Many great people said that to him, but especially saint-like people that he knew, like Ananda Ma. She told him he needed to share the wisdom of his guru, the love of his guru, the friendship of his guru. And he did. God in him, as him, was him, and he gave us that. Swami gave me in person a recognition of to who I am. I don't mean that in any kind of storybook way, if it was so miraculous. I had a very huge inferiority complex. I could cover it up greatly, but I never felt worthy of, accepting a lot of these teachings because I thought they were just for saints, people who, you had to be perfect. And Swami, on a couple occasions, just wiped that off the board for me. And I've been nothing but encouraged my whole 30 some years now with Ananda to always increase my energy. And I'd have to take advantage of that satsang, because it's the sadhana we've talked about, the practices of pranayama, but it's also the satsang. The group that you have can support each other and reflect to each other those higher aspects. And you don't have to take credit for it. You can say the guru in me, as me, is me, just like God in me, as me, is me. Guru in me, as me, is me. And what it does and needs to do, I will gladly accept. But I also don't claim it to be me. But I can enjoy and feel the power of that divine friendship. So you all have that in you, as you, being you now. And it's a matter of, now's your time to wake up. We are waking up all the time, ever new, ever expansive joy in you, as you, is you. And when you're in doubt, not a spot where God is not a spot where the guru is not. There you go. All right, friends. If you have any questions, why don't you direct them towards our dear friends, Kalamali and Aran, and they can forward them to me here if I don't hear them.
So thank you, Premdas. That was a really wonderful talk that came through you. Truly, that was really inspiring, very warm, and very real for all of us to feel Master's energy, and it was just beautiful, really. And it also shows who you are, that came through you, and what a divine friend. I think we all know how lucky we are to have you in our lives, but just thank you.
You're a role model as a channel.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Nuts. And I guess your words are very powerful and enlightening, the words through you. And often after these experiences, people go away uplifted and enlightened, from the knowledge and the ability that you share. And maybe you could share with everyone how to understand that that's within them. Like, it's almost like you're showing a mirror of them, and how to go about their day, but hold that and bring it out.
Tough. It's tough. It's not, it's tough, but it's not. If you can be non-attached, which these are the yamas and niyamas. This is the essence of the basics of living in Dharma, is follow that path of the 5 yamas and niyamas. Look at them if you have them listed somewhere, and realize that you can practice this. It's a tool you can use all the time. And you're going to find yourself not living up to maybe the ideal of each one. But that's good. That's good, because you catch yourself and you start refining it. And so I've got a neighbor that I've had issues with. I mean, I'm living in Ananda, and everybody comes here, it's wonderful. You all live in peace and harmony. Well, we do our best, but there's still elements that are always going to be a little discordant. Well, one of the biggest things I've had to work with, and it's a blessing, and I didn't always feel that way, but I've got a neighbor who just has a difficult life and can be difficult to be around. And my job is to love him. My job is to see that he is the same quality soul that everybody else is. He just has his own unique experiences. And if I hold him into what my ego wants to have him as, lower than light, not one of these qualities, then he will reflect that back to me. I really believe that. The more powerful we become, the more we channel, the more we can maybe disabuse, if maybe that's not the perfect word, but we misuse that power, and we keep people and peoples and things and conditions at that level. And so I have to correct my own approach. That's happened a couple times in my life, and it's good. It's good. So that's just one way to think of these things. These are opportunities. We're here, people say, as a classroom, perhaps, but we're here to learn.
That's such a good example. I think we can all relate to that story. I saw a lot of people lighting up with a little giggle here and there, which is good. I think it's always good to keep things light when we're in this world, but not of it. So, dear Premdas, people are just a reminder, feel free, everyone, to write anything in the chat. But I do, yeah, have maybe one last question, or we can also keep any questions as you guys might still come up with some. But did you have any example of divine friendship from Swamiji that really touched you? I know you've spent time with him in your long life as a devotee, and I know people, well, we have a lot of people who never got to be with him in person. So I think those stories are always really special.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was in the hospitality business for many years. And at some point, and I keep saying this, but I need to do it soon, I need to write down about like my 6 dinners with Swamiji. And in many of those I was serving, but I also was a guest in some of these situations. But Swami, whether he intended to be my friend or intended to lift me up consciously as a single individual among a large group of people, it happened. It happened on numerous occasions where by being near Swami, okay, now, whether he thought he was going to act as a divine friend, I'm going to be a divine friend to Premdas, I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. But in those 6 instances, my life changed dramatically by being around him. And I was around him many times. I was never a good friend, like a personal friend, but I was placed by him intentionally by some of our other people, and I was given opportunities to be with him for a week. And I also, when I went to Italy originally, I went as part of our choir, for instance. My life was kind of in flux at that point. I had just been married, but I was working with Ananda in Palo Alto, living there. And I had an opportunity because I was a bass in our choir. They needed more basses. So they kind of asked me to go to Italy, and I had to come up with money. But luckily, the divine, through my wife, funded me and her. We went to Italy for a month and traveled and sang with about 60 people from Ananda. And Swami was singing with us. We did the oratorio. So we were with Swami every day at many, many meals. Well, the final night of our time in Assisi, before we went to Rome and we were going to fly home, the United States, where most of us were from, Swami happened to get up to thank us. And I've always been a sturdy chap, kind of broad shoulder, not broad shoulder, but broad chest, and able to carry my weight and others. And he came behind me and was talking, and at a certain point, he had a lot more energy then than he did at the end of his life. This was in 2000. And he leans into me. In fact, that picture is right there. You can't see it, but trust me, he's standing behind me and my new wife, Jivani. We're both devotees and singing in the choir. And he's got his hands on me because he's using me for ballast. But while he's doing that, he's also kind of rubbing my shoulders. And I looked at her, and that picture right there is I'm looking at my wife and Swami, and I said to her, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. And I walked away. I'd go to the bathroom. Swami sat back down. I came back, and she hits me and says, they need a chef. I said, what do you mean they need a chef? They said, Kabir, who was the manager back then, said, well, when we all leave in a day or two, their chef is ill, and they don't know what they're going to do in another 2 weeks when they reopen. Says, I told him that you can cook. Well, that morning I'd been praying. I'm Italian American by genetically. I grew up in an Italian family here in the United States, and I always wanted to be in Italy, and this was my one chance, but now I'm going home. I wanted to stay longer, and I wanted to be around Swami, and I wanted to be around St. Francis, my patron saint, as a kid. And I looked at my friend Kabir, and I said, you need a chef? He goes, yeah, your wife says you can cook. What's your background? Well, I told him. He says, whoa. He says, well, when you go back? I said, well, in 2 days, but I don't have to go back. He says, well, when can you come back here? I said, well, why should I leave? He says, oh, well, would you like to be our chef for the next, 6 months to a year? And I said, let's talk in the morning, but yes. So in the morning, I came back and talked to him. And I wound up going to Rome to sing. And instead of getting on the airplane, I went back and I lived in Italy for a year as a chef. And that's how I got to be associate also with the tour person for Americans and English-speaking people with St. Francis. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. And we were doing that by singing the Christ oratorio that Swami had written. But I was around Swami. And that's one of those 6 that I can recall situations where Swami said something to me or did something to me and opened a channel, because I knew I'd read too many stories about saints and sages and gurus to know that when you're in that energy, they don't even have to be conscious of it. Things just happen. And I've seen this at Ananda with Swami here and without Swami physically being here. I've seen this with this energy that things happen fast. With those who think of spirit all the time, there are very few obstacles. And this is very yogic because it's what we do in our body, right? It's what we do with our practices. By practicing these things, the obstacles dissolve. And your true heart, your true feeling nature, and by the way, that's the major thing that Yogananda taught us, was really to feel these things. That is the magnet. If you can have devotion and attunement to the guru, and you have these techniques, you are so blessed. And things will happen. Trust me, it really does. And there could be more, but we kind of have time. And by the way, if you have any questions that don't get answered or things come up later, you can write me, premdas@ananda.org. It's real easy. Okay. So.
Wow, thank you. That was an amazing story. People were just sharing what a lovely story that was that you shared with us. And just everything that you've shared today. I know everybody here is so grateful, but also it was like the perfect bridge to even what our Sangha is going to be talking about after you depart from us today, physically, but not in spirit, because we do feel you always with us. So thanks to everybody. Thank you, Premdas. And we love to end satsangs that we have with each other with sending out the energy that we've all been feeling, truly divine love, all the qualities that you shared, but especially sending out friendship, I think, into this world that people are so in need of connection and friends. And Davey just wrote that blog, All the World is My Friend. So how perfect is that, that we're all in tune with that expression of the divine in our life. So maybe, would you like to lead us in that?
Yeah, let's all just visualize all those amazing essence, the 8 realizations of Master's teachings with us, and then just visualize it being expanded and boosted out into this world for all those that need it, boosting those that are already in it. And let's send out 3 orms. Let's rub our hands together. Oh, hold on.
I just wanted to share this last thing. This is what Yogananda said, and it's good to remember that he's with us. Okay, he's with you. My body shall pass, but my work shall go on. My spirit will live on forever. Even when I am gone, I will work with you all to deliver the world with the message of God. Prepare yourself for the glory of God. Charge yourself with the flame of spirit, and the spirit of joy and the glory of God will be born within you. Wow, what a heritage we have. God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Premdas.
you. And everybody,
Okay,
you're all welcome to stay on, because we'll talk about our next steps as a Sangha. So thank you, dear Premdas. That was incredibly beautiful.
I love you all. Bye-bye.
Have a beautiful SRW.